I ask unanimous consent, Madam President, that after Senator Scott speaks and blocks the proposal, that I speak, Senator Peters speaks, and then Senator Murray speaks on the Califf nomination, and then we move forward on our unanimous consent requests. On the cloture vote.
Without objection.
Okay, Madam President.
Majority Leader.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate agree to the request of the House to return the papers with respect to H.R. 3076, and that when the Senate receives from the House the corrected engrossment of the bill, it be in the same procedural posture as it was at the time granting this request.
Madam President.
Senator from Florida.
Reserving the right to object. Let me first say that I care deeply about fixing the problems with the United States Postal Service. The Postal Service provides an essential service and touches the lives of nearly every American. The Postal Service also consumes billions in taxpayer and consumer money every year, meaning that it has to be accountable to taxpayers and consumers, not only in how effectively it delivers, but in how it spends the dollars it receives. So I absolutely support getting something done to reform the Postal Service and ensure it is more accountable to taxpayers and consumers. I also support provisions of this bill, like its focus on enhanced services for rural communities, which will benefit many families across my great state. I like the fact that it maintains the current 6-day mail delivery schedule. Unfortunately, there are also pieces of this bill that set us back and block the opportunity for us to achieve our shared goal of responsibly reforming the Postal Service. What I'm asking for here is not unreasonable. I simply want the Senate to have the opportunity to work on this, improve it, and to deliver a bill that truly works. The Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs has jurisdiction over the Postal Service. I am absolutely very proud to serve on this committee. Unfortunately, the committee has not held one hearing or member meeting on the bill, nor has the bill even been considered at a markup. Madam President, we aren't here just considering a simple resolution. This is a massive, multi-billion-dollar bill that has huge impacts on Medicare recipients, and the Democratic majority skipped the committee process and rushed the bill to the floor. Despite the rush process around the bill, a few details need to be highlighted, and they are not pretty. First, I said before, this bill does not fix the underlying issues with the Postal Service, nor does it make it profitable. I don't understand why the Postal Service loses money and cannot be profitable. I don't think many Americans understand why. Madam President, America has more than $30 trillion in debt. We can't afford to add more stress on our already enormous national debt with poor financial planning, which I think this bill absolutely does. In fact, this bill simply shifts risk to Medicare recipients by adding billions in new costs to Medicare. I'm not sure why the Democrats are so eager to threaten the viability of Medicare or the benefits for Medicare recipients. Democrats triggered billions in Medicare funding cuts in 2021 in Florida and other states in their wasteful partisan COVID spending bill. Now they're putting even more stress on Medicare and the benefits of Medicare recipients by shifting billions in new costs onto the program. According to the Congressional Budget Office, between just 2025 and 2031, this bill would increase costs to Medicare by more than $1.9 billion for Part B and $4.2 billion for Part D. This will hurt Medicare recipients. And even that score is based on the limited number of future budget years that were covered in the CBO's review. We must have a long-term CBO score on this bill so that Congress can clearly review the future impacts to Medicare recipients. That's why I sent the director of the CBO a letter earlier today asking for more information about this bill. Over 60 million seniors across our country, including more than 4.5 million seniors in Florida, rely on Medicare. It is unconscionable to add further expenses to them and place the future cost of postal workers on the line when Medicare is already on the road to insolvency. The retiree health benefits for the Postal Service are partially funded. This bill provides no new funding for the retiree health benefits of postal workers. It doesn't solve the problem. Now, I heard that my Democrat colleagues say this bill will address the massive supply chain crisis that millions of Americans' families have suffered from. I couldn't disagree with them more on this point, and frankly, I'm shocked that they are willing to unfairly stick our postal workers with the blame for the failures of the Biden administration that have created or worsened our supply chain problems. This bill does nothing to address the supply chain problem. I know that the hardworking men and women of the Postal Service aren't the ones causing this crisis, but if my colleagues insist that they are, that's even more of a reason to make sure this bill is heard in committee so we can really dig into the problem and make sure we come up with a sustainable solution. There is no looming deadline that will necessitate rushed action by the Senate. This bill perfectly captures everything that is wrong with the way Washington solves problems. instead of taking the time to craft a sustainable, affordable, and accountable solution that serves the interests of taxpayers, Medicare recipients, consumers, and postal workers, and achieves our policy goals, Congress rushes bills into law so that politicians can send out a press release saying they did something, even if it simply actually makes the problem worse. If any business operated like this, it would absolutely fail. We have to stop this insanity. Given the scope of the legislation, the potential negative impact to postal workers, taxpayers, consumers, Medicare recipients, and seniors, the Senate should carefully and thoughtfully consider this bill. We should take all appropriate steps to make sure that we get this right. The Senate has simply not afforded the opportunity to do that. Therefore, I object.
Madam President.
Objection is heard.
Madam
Majority
President,
Leader.
what we heard is why people really are frustrated, angered at the United States Senate. A broad bipartisan bill, months and months in the making, with large amounts of discussion, has the support of the Democratic chair of the committee, the Republican chair of the committee, was voted in the House with a majority of Democrats and a majority of Republicans, and would finally fix the post office. I hope my colleague from Florida has ever heard his colleagues in Florida, his voters, talk about snail mail, about everything coming late. Prescription drugs coming late, Social Security checks coming late, birthday cards arriving weeks after the birthday occurred. And finally, both parties come together in a bipartisan way in the House and Senate to pass this legislation. And the senator from Florida is using a technical detail to hold us up. It's the same bill that was on the floor Thursday, where we had agreement to move to vote on it tonight. But the House sent us a bill with the technical change, and 5 times in the past this has happened, and each time no senator had the temerity to get up and block it on a technical issue, and it just passed by UC, and we went and moved forward. Our constituents want us to fix the post office. A majority, overwhelming, of Democrats and Republicans want us to fix the post office. All the postal workers are for this bill. My colleague from Florida says he's defending postal workers. Ask for the people who represent them. I dare say it's the head of the letter carriers and the head of the postal workers and the head of the mail handlers who represent the postal workers more than the senator from Florida. And they're overwhelmingly for the bill, as is the postmaster, an appointee of President Trump. So everyone tries to come together and get something done, and the arcane rules of the Senate allow one person to stand up on a bill that's been out there and discussed repeatedly at the last minute and raise objections. It's regrettable and it's sad. There's good news, though. Even though this will delay the bill, we will pass it. We will have to just go through this elaborate process, the old-fashioned and often discredited rules of the Senate that the senator from Florida is employing. We'll have to use them, but we will pass this bill because America needs it. Rural people need it. Senior citizens need it. Veterans need it. 80% of the veterans' prescriptions are sent through the mail. Nobody should be standing in the way of this bill. It's a sad day that just one member has. I yield the floor to Senator Peters.
Well, thank you, Leader
Senator from
Schumer.
Michigan.
Madam President?
Senator from Michigan.
Madam President, I stand in support of this bill. This bill is absolutely essential to make sure that the Postal Service is on sound financial footing. As Leader Schumer mentioned, Americans all across our country rely on the Postal Service to deliver critical items to their home, things like medicines, which go via the Postal Service. They expect that service to provide it 6 days a week and to do it on time. But unfortunately, the Postal Service has been saddled with rules that make it very, very difficult. The legislation before us is an attempt to fix those rules that make it more difficult for the Postal Service to deliver essential services and do it in a cost-effective way. It is something that has been discussed here in Congress for a decade or more. A decade or more. This is not an issue that just came out of nowhere. This is something we've been trying to fix for nearly a decade. Over the last year and a half, we have been working on bipartisan, bicameral legislation, bringing people together and saying, let's just focus on what is common sense. And let's see, what is common sense? Right now, the Postal Service has to pre-fund retirement health care for decades. No other company in America needs to do that. No other federal agency in the government does that. No one does it, but the Postal Service is saddled with this requirement, which is tens of billions of dollars. It's common sense to treat the Postal Service like every other business and every other government agency in federal government. Also, it makes sense to have retirees integrated into Medicare, like every single company in America. It'll be integrated into Medicare, and let's be clear, those postal workers have been paying into Medicare their whole working career. They're paying into Medicare. They should have the ability to actually get Medicare. This will also help the Postal Service be able to function in an efficient and effective way. The bipartisan, bicameral work that we did, I worked with my ranking member, Senator Portman. We've been working with our counterparts in the House, in both Democratic chair and the Republican ranking member, came up with an agreement, got wide consensus from folks throughout Congress. In fact, the bill that I introduced here in the Senate, which is basically the bill that is before us from the House, has 28 co-sponsors, 14 Republicans, 14 Democrats. How many bills do we have here on the floor that have that much support from both sides? This is bipartisan. This is common sense. It addresses a critical issue for the American people, and they want us to come together and solve it. But instead, we have a procedural blocking technique to slow this down. And every day we wait, it puts the Postal Service in more jeopardy. It's time for action now. As the leader mentioned, since 2000, there have been similar kinds of mistakes by the transfer of a bill 5 times in 20 years. And every time it's been settled quickly because people say, just a mistake, let's move on with the business of the people. Let's not play games. I would hope we could do that now. 5 times it went quickly. In fact, 3 of those times, the bills that came over had less bipartisan support than this bill. This bill had 120 Republicans support it in the House. It is time to move this forward. Let's stop playing games. Let's help the Postal Service. Let's help the American people. And let's show that the United States Senate knows how to get a job done.
And I dare say, the senator from Michigan speaks for the